And, we are live, John. How about that? Draft Man
All
Standing,
right.
episode 8. Talking Ravens and Chargers draft picks today. John's going to be comparing some top offensive tackle prospects, Orlando Brown and Connor Williams. And I'm going to be going over the history of the number 9 pick in the NBA draft because to me there's a clear top 8. I don't know how you want to order them, but there's top 8 guys, and so I wanted to see what's the history of the guy who goes number 9. So with that being said, John, I think we should kick this off with those offensive tackles. So get us going
Yeah.
here on whoever you want. What do you want to start with, Orlando Brown or Connor Williams?
Yeah, I'll start with Connor Williams because he's my top ranked offensive tackle this year, and I think he's most people's. And going in, I wasn't as sold on him as maybe some other people are. I think he'll be a first round pick ultimately. I think he's a really solid player, but I don't think he's one of these surefire tackles that we've seen in the last couple of years. Guys like Ronnie Stanley, um, Laramie Tunsil, Taylor Decker, and some of the other guys that have come out recently. He's not. I don't think he's in that class. I think he's right below there. But I like him. I think he's a solid player, and I do think he's worth being the top tackle taken. Just to talk about him a little bit as a player, he's a great athlete, and I think that's probably his best skill set is how fast he is, how quick he is to the edge to stop pass rushers, how good he is the second level. He's also got really good hand technique, excellent footwork. And while he's not, the most powerful mauling tackle out there, he's definitely got the attitude that you like to see from an offensive lineman and someone who's going to, finish every single block, whether or not he's the strongest guy on the field or not. So that's what I like about Connor Williams. Obviously, there's some injury issues. He only played in 5 games in 2017, but he did return. He sprained his MCL and PCL and tore his meniscus, which required surgery, but still returned in 2017. So that's a little bit more of the toughness. And again, like I mentioned, his power isn't great, and he was a little inconsistent in 2017 pre-injury. He didn't look too great against Maryland in their first game there. But I do like him. I think he's going to be the first tackle off the board, and I think he's worthy of being the number 1 tackle this season. However, Orlando Brown, another guy who got some hype coming out, and then it's cooled off a little bit. People are worried about his size, about his athleticism, which are fair points because, at 6'7", 350 pounds, there just are not a lot of tackles the size of Orlando Brown. But I think Brown, while clearly behind Connor Williams, I think he's not nearly as risky as some people think he is because of his size. His hand technique is very good. His footwork is very good. I think his speed at his size was kind of surprising. He wasn't overwhelmed by many speed rushers in the games that I've watched him play, and his polished fundamentals was definitely a good part of it. Something that helped him with some of his stiffness, moving laterally, and not being a natural waist bender because he is so tall. But that, along with absolutely elite power, makes him a tackle that I think, while I put him in the second round, if he went in the first round, I wouldn't be concerned with it at all because I think he's a guy who's going to come in, start right away for you. If not at left tackle, then at right tackle. And I think can definitely be a left tackle at some point in the future for a team.
All right, John. All right. So, based on your descriptions of both guys, it sounds like neither one's a perfect prospect.
Yeah.
And I know you said that, there's no Ronnie Stanley in this class. But
Yeah.
I know a guy last year in a similar offensive tackle group, I would say, where there wasn't a clear, surefire offensive tackle. This guy's going top 5.
Right.
I know you really liked Ryan Ramczyk. So
Yeah.
how far away is Connor Williams from Ryan Ramczyk?
Um, He's enough, I would say, away. Like, I would say Ramczyk would still definitely be the best tackle in the class this year.
Okay.
Especially because really the only issue I had with him last year was the injuries, and the fact that he was a one-year starter. And Williams, also has injury issues. So I think Ramczyk would definitely be the number one tackle. I would say, by enough that he would separate himself from Connor Williams, but not by, a huge amount either. But Ramczyk to me last year was a guy that was really being overlooked. I don't really know why he was overlooked so much. And clearly when the Saints took him at the end of the first round, it made me look smarter because he was clearly the best tackle in the class last year. Just his combination of polish and power made him, a starter from day one when Teron Armstead was injured. So I think Ramczyk would still be tackle one in this year's class, would be, clearly tackle one, but I still think Williams and Brown are solid prospects.
All right. Fair enough, John. Now, my next question to you, and I feel obligated to do this. So,
yes,
with each week we gotta get in our Lamar Jackson reference. So, this week the way I figure we can work this in is, listen, okay. Part of the reason I think Lamar Jackson is so valuable is because of the dearth of talent at the offensive tackle position, with Jackson's ability to get out of the pocket and run. So, what have you seen from both of these guys in terms of their pass blocking abilities? Because, you mentioned with Brown, his size being a concern for some guys, but you said on tape you didn't see that issue against him, facing speed rushers. So, what have you seen on tape from these guys in terms of their pass protection?
I think Williams is probably going to be the better pass protector right away because even though he's not extremely powerful, and he'll have some issues with pass rushers who, are power leverage type of pass rushers, I think the majority of speed rushers he's going to be able to handle just fine. And, I think his combination of footwork, athleticism, and hand technique is going to make him, a better pass blocking tackle right away and someone who can definitely help Lamar Jackson. And really, if you want to run Lamar Jackson, if you want to have them do some read options, some design quarterback runs, Connor Williams is the perfect tackle to do some pulling and moving around to get to the second level and block for Lamar Jackson. Now, if someone's going to take the two of them, it's probably going to have to be someone with 2 first-round picks. So someone like the Buffalo Bills, maybe, if Connor Williams and Lamar Jackson fall to 21 and 22. If not those two, if that team, Cleveland has 2 first-round picks, but I don't think they're going to use 1 and 4 on those two guys.
Right.
If maybe, Connor Williams fell to the end, maybe the Giants could if they want to take Lamar too, and Connor Williams is still there at the beginning of the second round, maybe. But that would be a big if. But Orlando Brown would definitely be a player who, a team could probably take Lamar Jackson in the first round and get Orlando Brown in the second round. And while I don't think his pass protection is as good, especially because of his size and some of the inconsistencies that he has, I still think that power is going to be able to help. And if you want to have Lamar Jackson, Brown is not going to be a guy who you want pulling and moving in space to help Lamar Jackson. If you want to have him run to Brown's side and just see him overwhelm his defensive end, that's certainly an option.
Fair enough, John. So any closing comments on those two guys before I move into the history of the number 9 pick here?
I didn't really get to say it, I guess, but these two tackles, I don't think they're as far apart as some people may think they are. I think Williams is better, but I don't think he's overwhelmingly better than Orlando Brown. And I think Orlando Brown, while some of the hype is faded, I think he should be a starting tackle when it's all said and done in the NFL.
All right. So you got 2 quality tackles, one a little more rundown, one a little more pass oriented, but still, 2 guys who could help your football team. So pay attention to those 2 guys come draft day. Now, moving on here to the history of the number 9 pick. And as I mentioned at the head of this video, the reason I picked the number 9 spot to look at the history is because I think the top 8 guys have kind of solidified themselves. When you look at, I don't necessarily know what order you can argue who should go 1 through 8, what have you, but these are the 8 guys. You have DeAndre Ayton, you have Marvin Bagley, you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Luka Doncic, Michael Porter, and then you have Mohamed Bamba, and then Wendell Carter and Trae Young. Those are the 8 guys who I think have separated themselves. And so with that being said, I thought it would be, important and kind of fun to look back and see who's gone number 9. So in recent years, you've had, last year's number 9 pick was Dennis Smith Jr., who certainly got a lot of hype. Then there was a string of big men who've been so-so, although you could argue they've been bust in terms of Noah Vonleh. Hurdle rather, and Kaminsky have been serviceable to the next level. But then you go back a little further and you look at, there was a stretch from 2009 to 2012 where the number 9 pick was just phenomenal. Where you look at starting in 2009, DeMar DeRozan, then Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, and Andre Drummond. So that's just a phenomenal string of picks there. And you go back even further, you have 2007, Joakim Noah, 2004, Andre Iguodala, 2002, Amari Stoudemire. But my favorite string here is from the late 90s when you have, starting in 1997, Tracy McGrady, Dirk Nowitzki, and Shawn Marion all selected at number 9. And so you can definitely find some talent, a very talented player, I should say, at the number 9 pick. And so with that being said, who might be some candidates for this year's number 9 selection? I think you have to start with the Bridges. They're not related, but they are both quality wing players in Mikal and Miles, although Miles will spend more time at the 4. I think Mikal is probably more of a 2-3, maybe could spend some time at the 4, whereas Miles is certainly a 3-4, probably best at the 4. But both of those guys are in play for the number 9 selection. And then as well as Colin Sexton, I think the point guard prospect from Alabama will definitely be in that range for the number 9 pick. But, with those 3 guys, you could have a very good NBA player and a guy who could end up being a couple-time All-Star just from those 3. And I think it just goes to show the talent in this year's draft.
So, Jack, you talking about here how the number 9 pick, there's still some talent available. How late into the lottery do you think we'll be able to go this season until the talent starts to get a little less of the potential starter or big contributing role player variety to, just a rotational guy?
Right. Yeah, great question, John. I think it's going to be somewhere around 12.
Okay.
And, like I said, those 3 guys definitely, add on to the first 8. And then there's 2 guys from Kentucky, Kevin Knox and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Knox has the better tools. I think Gilgeous-Alexander is the better player. But Knox is going to take time to develop for sure. And so that's going to be interesting and something to pay attention to. He could develop similarly to Tobias Harris, who took several years but ended up becoming a very good scorer. I could see Knox doing that as well, but I anticipate him struggling initially. So, in terms of guys who are going to be able to be starters and impact players, it's that 12, somewhere around 12, 13 area where it's going to start to taper off.
Okay. So not to, to something that has come off the top of my head here with all the FBI news regarding college basketball.
Sure.
With Ayton being at really the forefront of it
right.
in Arizona, do you think that could affect his draft stock, or do you think ultimately it won't be that big a deal to NBA teams what college teams sought after him to do in the NCAA?
Yeah, short answer, no. I don't see it being any sort of an issue, red flag, what have you, for Ayton.
Mm-hmm.
I think most teams are going to generally just look past it. The only thing would be is if they found, something where, Ayton, during the process of committing and ultimately it seems like accepting this money. Some part of his character maybe, that they didn't appreciate, but there's so many different reasons guys take money that you can't look at this up front, at least on face value, and say this is going to have any impact on his draft stock, because quite frankly, if any person objectively looking at this had the opportunity to take that money, they most likely would have. And so
yeah,
I don't think it affects him in the slightest.
Yeah, and I think if it comes out that he took some money, to judge him for it would be absurd, because so many other of these one and done players have taken money from schools. It just hasn't come out yet.
Right, exactly. It'd be unfair to DeAndre Ayton to have him as the poster child for something that we know has been a problem throughout the NCAA and is not the fault of the student, but rather the system.
Yep, exactly.
But
so now we're going to get into we're going to get into the 2018 NFL Draft with teams 16 and 17. And Jack, we're going to start with your Baltimore Ravens at 16. Where do you think they need to focus? And of course, with Ozzie Newsome, where do you think ultimately the focus will wind up?
Oh God, John. Oh gosh. The second part of that question, I am hopeless. I am mortified. And mortified is the wrong term because I have all faith in Ozzie. He is the man, the wizard. But boy, have the past few drafts, the top of the drafts, really mystified me. I've had no idea where he's going to go. And, he's had success. The past couple drafts, I think, with Marlon Humphrey and Ronnie Stanley. There was the one a couple years before that, Matt Elam, which from the jump, I really questioned that pick, and that didn't turn out well. So we'll see.
Brashad Perriman, of course.
Exactly. That was another one which I immediately was like, what are you doing? But what have you, I think, and that brings me to where I think we should go, wide receiver. I don't think it's much of a question. Calvin Ridley should be the guy if he's available. But that also makes me, very, very understanding to the fact that that probably won't be who they select. And so, with that being said, one of the guys who I actually, in doing my research for the pick, considered it would be Orlando Brown, which was funny when you mentioned that was going to be who you wanted to talk about today. So, I think offensive line is definitely going to be something they look at, especially with Marshall Yonda not getting any younger. They need other pieces to surround Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, I think you have to look to that offensive line. Or really, I think you just have to look to the offense in general, because that defense
it's pretty damn good.
Great young pieces.
Yeah, they've got pieces on the edge. They've got pieces in a secondary, and they've got guys up front as well. And so, maybe you look for another linebacker to pair with Mosley, but they've done so well at just finding guys to play next to him and guys who've been longtime special teamers or guys who've just been around the organization who are undrafted, that just is not where they're going to go. So it's going to be offensive line or receiver. And I don't, again, I expect to be surprised, but I just don't see it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think offensive tackle or wide receiver, I think maybe running back if someone like a Darius Geis is on the board, or if they look at someone like Ronald Jones and they think he can be, a home run hitting playmaker for them, I think that could also be, up for debate.
I would agree, except I thought Alex Collins is the running back. Yeah.
And played really well.
He played really well. And so, I would say that running back could be there, and Geis is obviously we both think he's on a different level than a guy like Collins. But Collins played so well that it'd be tough for them to go first round running back. And I know you're just throwing out suggestions. But, as I said, it's got to be, to me, wide receiver, offensive line. And the other area they could go on the offensive line would be guard. Because as I said, Yanda's not getting any younger, so it wouldn't be totally surprising to see maybe a guard prospect like Isaiah Wynn or
Yep.
Will Hernandez possibly.
Yep.
But offensive line. I think it's if Calvin Ridley's there, it's Calvin Ridley. If he's not, offensive line.
All right. So now moving on to Los Angeles Chargers, and the needs for the Chargers are pretty similar to the Ravens: offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. And last year
they addressed it.
Yeah, last year they took a big step in the right direction with Forrest Lamp and Joe Feeney. And I think it's safe to say their guards are locked down, but they still need a lot of help at tackle. They still really don't have a settled tackle situation. And I think this year they would be smart to look for a left tackle. Connor Williams probably will be gone by 17. I think if he's there for the Ravens will definitely snatch him up at 16. So the Chargers are probably going to be left with some of the second-tier tackles like Orlando Brown. And then it really depends on who's your pick from the other guys who are pretty solid. Guys like Tyrell Crosby from Oregon, guys like Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame, and some of the other players like Jamarco Jones from Ohio State, and those guys who are really kind of the second tier of offensive tackles. So if the Chargers are going to take a tackle there, it would be a bit of a reach if it's not Connor Williams. Orlando Brown wouldn't be too bad, but if it's not either of those two, it would be a bit of a reach. But for the Chargers, I don't see many positions that you look at and say, wow, they really need to add someone here, besides offensive tackle. So I think tackle would be the smart pick. And if you can trade down, maybe you try to trade down so you can get a little more value when you decide to pick up your tackle. Or just, go ahead, reach a little bit. If there's a tackle you like, then go get him at 17 and be satisfied. They're obviously going to need quarterback in the future for Phillip Rivers, but I think by 17, the top 5 will probably all be gone.
Yeah, John, actually, sorry to interject. That's where something just popped into my head. So I know you just said you think they'll all be gone, but even for the Ravens at 16, who could also be looking for a future quarterback, it would scare me if I were a fan of either of these franchises. But if Josh Allen falls, I mean, he's definitely a guy who needs seasoning. He could sit behind Flacco or Rivers.
Yeah.
And, both these teams, as we've said, they have offensive line needs, but it's going to be tough to say that there's going to be offensive line values where they are.
Right.
So maybe Allen moves up on the board for them because both have solid defenses as well. So, and the Chargers aren't really looking for a receiver.
Right. No, definitely not after Mike Williams last year.
Right. So, I mean, how likely do you think that could be?
How likely do I think it could be that Allen is still there and they take him?
Yeah.
I think if Allen is still there and they like him, I think you'd have to take him because getting your quarterback of the future is, just more important at the moment than finding, a tackle for immediate success. If you really, really like Josh Allen. And, I think it's possible. Josh Allen is a really interesting guy because you can love him and you can look at him and say, okay, he has all the tools, which he absolutely does, but he's going to need a patient, efficient coaching staff to get the most out of him because he's by no means a finished product. But in terms of if he's a finished product, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in this draft class. So if Los Angeles likes that, they could take him. And if he falls to 17, then they very well could take him. Other guys like Baker Mayfield, what they think, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls on draft day. I think Donald and Rosen will be long gone by 17. Obviously, you know how I feel about Lamar Jackson. He could very well be available at 17 as well. But we'll see about that. So I think Allen potentially could fall. Mayfield could fall. Lamar Jackson could still be available at 17. So I think they'd have to think long and hard about getting those quarterbacks if they're there for the Chargers. I wouldn't fault them for reaching for offensive line there either. Or, at they really could use a run stuff and nose tackle because Brandon Meebane, you talk about Marshall Yanda not getting any younger. Meebane is definitely not getting any younger either. So getting someone like Vita Vea or, maybe not, a run stuffer, maybe more like an interior pass rusher like Taven Bryan or Maurice Hurst or even Deron Payne could be, a direction the Chargers move in. But I think those should be the three positions they're looking at: tackle, quarterback, and defensive line.
Tackle, quarterback, defensive line. Got it, John. We managed to squeeze in a Lamar Jackson reference. We got in Josh Allen. And we had a tremendous draft man standing. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday at 6:30. Peace.